Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our online American Studies online classroom. And previously, actually, I have asked you to prepare for the Google meeting, but since I couldn't make it, so I recorded this video instead. And I also realized that some of you just don't have the internet connection because Google Meet, it requires some kind of strong connection, and some of you may be also running out of the credit. So I decided to record this week's material for you, for you to be able to rewind and rewatch again. Okay, so previously we have talked about industrial revolution, American industrial revolution, which caused had changed the way how American citizen lived at that time. So when we talk about revolution, we talk about machinery, we talk about big factories, we talk about production, we talk about distribution, we talk about goods, and most importantly, we are talking about the labor. Labor means the workforce who are behind this kind of industrial revolution. So big factory needs lots of workers, right? So that's why people are moving from the rural area to the cities just to become laborers in big factories. And because of there are so many laborers, that means they're also having some kind of voices to voice out, because at that time laborers are still paid very low. Okay, so now we'll be talking about the labor movement. So this labor movement, they have fought for their safety and healthy, because at that time maybe the condition of the laborers uh, were not that good, because the owners, or let's say the businessmen who own the factories, they did not pay that much attention toward the workers or laborers welfare. So that's why there was some kind of movements, which is what we call as the labor movement, which the purpose of this labor movement was actually to improve the life conditions of the members, which is the laborers themselves. And these labor unions, they were actually looking for the improvement for their wages, their salaries, let's say, and then their safety when they are working. And of course, they are looking for the protection for their healthy, and then an 8-hour working regulation. So before, it is more than 8 hours. So they work in the factory, it was more than 8 hours. But they realized that even though you have been putting so much efforts to work that hard, more than 8 hours, but if you just get tired, and if you just get unproductive things, then it is useless if you are working more than 8 hours. The point is, it was very ineffective. So this labor movement were actually going to voice this kind of concerns to improve their working condition, working situation. Okay, so they were also looking for job security. Job security means the owners or the businessmen could not lay them down because of some reasons. I mean, the owners cannot just cut them down. So there were also regulations that the owners required to follow, so they feel secure when they are working. And of course, they were looking for the health benefits, what the owners, what the factories could offer for them when they got sick. So they just were not being eliminated at that time if they are getting sick. So they still have rights to get to the hospital and being paid by the owners. And also the pension plans. So this is very important. At that time, the laborers in the United States of America, they have some kind of concerned that what would happen after they're no longer working. So even though the labor in the United States of America, they got this kind of pension, just like in Indonesia, if you are a civil servant, you got this kind of working pensions. Okay, and there was so many movement. You can see from your book. It started from the year 1869. Yeah, from the 1869. The name of the Union of the Labor is the Knights of Labors, which was founded by Uriah Stephens. So actually, the activities or the aim of this union to voice the things that I have mentioned before, but it wasn't very successful. So that's why they created another labor union in 1881, which was called the American Federation of Labor, or AFL. Founder was Samuel Gompers. So this Samuel Gompers only represented skilled laborers. Yeah. So these skilled laborers, those who are included for those who operating the machines. The skilled workers mean those who have been trained or given training before by the owners. Okay, so while they were trying to voice out their concern, this labor movement in 1881, they were quite successful. The result of this movement, this union represented only skilled workers, and it got them higher wages, shorter hours, and better working conditions. So because of this movement, eventually they got what they wanted. So they wanted higher wages, and they also wanted a better working space, for example, or better working conditions. And after 1881, the famous one was in 1938. It was called the Congress of Industrial Organization, or CIO, which was founded by John L. Lewis. This union represented the semi-skilled, and skilled workers. Its strike shut down whole industries, not just individual factories. So basically, what they wanted was actually to make every union laborers becoming prosper. In terms of prosperity, you don't think that the prosperity or the welfare of the union are the same with the owners of the factories. No, what they just wanted was actually to have a proper living condition, to have a house, a decent house, and to have their children going to a proper school. So basically, it was only basic needs, basic wants from these laborers. And the last one in 1955. In 1955, there were actually a union called AFL-CIO. So basically, these two unions that I have mentioned before, they were being merged or merger. So the AFL joined the CIO, and it was very powerful movement until President Reagan's government weakens the union. So there was an attempt from the president of Reagan about this union, because at the time economic was shaking. Because of the economy was shaking, there were so many factories closed or shut down because of there were so many demands from this labor movement. Because of there were so many demands from these labor movements, most of the business women or the owners of these factories realized that if they fulfill the needs of these laborers, they would not having any kind of advantages or benefits. So it will cost them to close the factory because there were not enough advantages or benefits or profits to fulfill every laborers. Okay, and this kind of movement, particularly labor movement, eventually becoming what we call as political party movement. Okay, so there were also what we call as a political party which called the Populist Party, which was formed by farmers in the United States of America in 1892. So basically, the founder of this political movement or party were farmers. Okay, so they felt that the big business had too much power to govern them, to supervise them, and they felt that the whole system in the United States was not really fair toward them, particularly toward the farmers and industrial workers, or what we call as the laborer. And they also believe that the government must have this kind of power, big power, to control like the railroads or the telephone system, because previously the government were not able to own this kind of company. So basically it's like state-owned companies, or what we call in Indonesia as BUMN. So these BUMN were not there or exist in the USA. So those who run for, let's say, the railroad companies or the telephone companies, they were owned by private companies. So these parties, these farmers movements and industrial workers movement, they believe that the government should control this kind of things, particularly the railroad companies and the telephone companies. So the government must have some kind of power, or the government must have some kind of authority to govern this kind of companies. So at that time, remember, the railroad companies and telephone companies were owned by private companies. So this movement believed that the government should own their own railroad companies and telephone system companies. And they also wanted a graduated income tax, which means for those small industry must have different tax with those big industries. That's what they call as a very fair tax system. So what we call as graduated income tax is actually the higher or the bigger companies you have, then the higher the amount of taxes that you need to pay to the government. At that time, the tax were all the same. So the point was, this movement wanted to voice out, if we have small business, don't make our business have to pay a big amount of tax just like big business. So yeah, this kind of a fair movement, from the political party and a movement in 1892, which was called as the Populist Party. Okay, in the first part of the 20th century, progressive thinkers formed a movement for social reform, and this social reform believed in a square deal for ordinary Americans. So they tried to help workers, small businesses, and farmers. Just I've told you before that they wanted a fair share of paying taxes. So if you have a big business, then you have to pay more. If you have a small business, then you only have to pay little tax. Okay, that's fair. And the 16th Amendment established the federal income tax, and the 17th Amendment allowed voters to elect U.S. senators directly. So there was a change. There was a change to talk about political party. Before, they couldn't vote directly for the senators. So if you talk about the senators, it will be very interesting, and we'll be talking about the senators later, because it is the whole different concept of political system in the United States of America. So I just want you to get the introduction first about the political movement in the United States of America, because up until now there were only two big parties recognized by the United States, which is first Republic Party, and the second one is Democratic Party. So today's U.S. government, which is Donald Trump, was actually sponsored by Republicans. And before, if you heard about Barack Obama, he was elected by the Democratic Party. So later on, we will be talking about this kind of two-system parties. Today, I just want you to learn more about how this kind of movement from the labor movement becoming into political movement. And it's really, it was very clear reasons for America to change their way of thinking about the political system. I think that's all for today. It is quite 15 minutes videos, but I hope you get some kind of information about the impact of the Industrial Revolution. The impact of the Industrial Revolution was actually more into the human sense, which came to the how humans, when it comes to work, become rationalized, and people are getting more educated at the time that they actually had rights to be fulfilled by the owners of the business or by the owners of the factories. So this industrial revolution has brought so much changes in the landscape of US political system. I think that's all for today. Thank you so much, and hopefully next week we could meet in Google Meet. Okay, so that's all. Take care, stay safe, and stay healthy. Bye bye.